everybody to the May 19th Planning Commission meeting for the Mendocino County Planning Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 9:04 a.m. The Mendocino County Planning Commission meetings will be conducted virtually and not available for in-person public participation pursuant to provisions of Government Code Section 54953 and the recommendation of the Mendocino County Health Officer. Meetings are live streamed and available for viewing on the Mendocino County YouTube page at youtube.com/Mendocino County Video. In order to minimize the risk of exposure during this time of emergency, the public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org or orally via telecomment in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made available to the commissioners, staff, and the general public after processing by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting agenda on the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit public comments via telecomment, the Zoom link and associated instructions can be found on the agenda for this meeting. In order to ensure that you are called upon to provide comment, please complete the telecomment form found at mendocinocounty.org/government/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Here.
Commissioner Pollan,
Here.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Bibini,
Here.
Chair Purnell.
Here. Very good. Moving on to agenda item 2, which is 2A, discussion and possible action, including adoption of the resolution of the Mendocino County Planning Commission, finding that state or local officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing in connection with public meetings. And before I invite a motion, I was hoping that we could get an update from staff on how things are going with the Board of Supervisor meetings, which I understand at this point are hybrid meetings.
That's correct. Julia Krog, Director. The board is still continuing hybridized meetings at this time and has been working on their policies and procedures to essentially be put into place. We have, of course, reached out about having the Planning Commission also participate in the board chambers, and we can follow up on that, and I'll try to get an update to the commission before your next meeting.
That sounds great. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments on that? I'd like to invite a motion then.
Pardon me, Chair Purnell, I would recommend taking comment.
Yes. Do we have anybody that would like to comment on this? Do you see anything, Julia?
If any members of the public in the attendees area wish to provide comment on this, please use the raise hand feature located at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a telephone, it is *9 to raise your hand. And I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, given that there is none, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for motion.
I move that we adopt the resolution extending the moratorium, yada, yada.
I second the motion.
Vice Chair Wiedemann,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones, or Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Bibini,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2B. Do we have a determination of legal notice for all items on the agenda?
All items were noticed properly.
Wonderful. And moving on to the agenda item 3, the director's report. Julia, do you have anything for us this morning?
Thank you, Chair Purnell. I have no updates this morning. primarily we have a more items on our agenda than usual. So I think with that, we'll just dive right in. So no updates, but I'm available for questions.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for the director? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 4, matters from the public. This is public expression. Members of the public are welcome to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is prohibited by law from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission under matters from the public may do so via email, telephone, or Zoom. For information on each of these methods, call the Planning and Building Department at 707-234-6650 or visit mendocino-building-services/meeting-services/meeting-agendas. All correspondence will be attached to the item and made available online on the Planning Commission agenda page. If any members of the public logged into the Zoom meeting wish to speak under public expression and have not completed the telecomment form, please use the raise hand feature and allow staff to add you to the meeting. Excuse me. Instructions for using the raise hand feature are found on the agenda for this meeting. Do we have anybody this morning for public expression?
I am looking, I do not see any hands raised within the attendees area. Again, if anyone wishes to provide comment under public expression, please use the raise hand feature. I see no hands raised.
Okay. Having nothing for public expression and nothing on our consent calendar, we are on agenda item 6A, which is case MS 2020-0006, a minor subdivision of one parcel in the city of Ukiah. There is a request for continuance on this item, but I would like to turn it over to staff to see if they would like to note anything else about this project.
Thank you, Chair Cornell, Julia Krog, Director. At this time, no, we have nothing additional to add beyond the memorandum. We'll be working with the applicant over the coming weeks to ensure that any conditions of approval are appropriately addressed within an updated resolution to the Planning Commission. So we will certainly be coming back and would like to ask for a continuance to June 16th. A date certain. That way we can be sure to keep this project moving forward. And we are, of course, available for any questions. I do believe there may be representatives of the application available on the line as well, but they had also requested a continuance for this item.
Thank you, Julia. Are there any questions from commissioners? Okay, great. Julia, do you know if the applicant who you said has joined us today, were they planning on presenting on this item today, or do they want to save that for the continuance on June 16th?
Not that I don't believe they were intending to present today, but if the applicant in the attendees area, if you would like to provide comment, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. It's a *9 if you're on the telephone, and that way we could allow you to speak. And I am not seeing that they have raised their hand, so I don't believe they intended to provide comment.
Okay, wonderful. So given all of that, I would prefer that we hold any public comment on this item until we hear this item in its entirety on June 16th, and just double checking with County Council that that's an appropriate way to proceed.
County Council Matthew Kudrowski. I think that's at the chair's discretion. And if we want to allow comment today for those who are here, I think both at the commission and board, if people who have come here today want to speak on the matter and they may not be available at the next meeting, I think sometimes it's been offered, but I do believe it's at the chair's discretion.
Okay, thank you for that. Given that people may have come today and can't come on June 16th, I would like to offer an opportunity for the public to speak on this issue. So at this time, I would like to open the public hearing. Julia, can you look into the waiting room to see if we have anybody that would like to speak?
Again, if any members of the public wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature and we can pull you over into the meeting. I see no raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will close the public hearing on this item. And then I do believe we are looking for a motion from the commission to continue this item.
I make a motion to continue this item to date certain of June 16th for the item MS 2020-0006.
Looking for a second?
Second that motion.
Roll call.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Bebini,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6B, case R 2021-0001. This is the rezone of a commercial parcel in the city of Ukiah, although presumably it's in the county of Mendocino. I would like to turn this over to staff for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hello, everyone. I am Planner TSR. Today, I'm presenting Rezone 2021-0001. The proposed project is to rezone a commercial parcel from a limited commercial C1 zoning district to a general commercial C2 zoning district for a future drive-through car wash. The general commercial district would allow additional uses, such as a car wash that limited commercial C1 does not. As a list of C2 permitted uses is listed on page 4 in the staff report. The property is located 1.75 miles south of Ukiah City Center, lying west of South State Street and north of Jefferson Lane. The address is 1550 South State Street in Ukiah. The project site is served by the Willow Water District for domestic water and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District for wastewater. Project referrals were sent to both agencies for comments, but no comments were provided. All water used for the car wash will be recycled and shall not exceed 20 to 50 gallons max per day. The project site is located within the MU2 General Plan Land Use Designation and Limited Commercial C1 Zoning District. Currently, the property is used as a convenience store with fuel pumps and a residence that's detached. Both the existing and proposed uses are consistent with the proposed zoning district. The rezone would remain consistent with the general commercial zoning district and the commercial land use designation, as well as the policies of the general plan DE10 land use category, commercial. An initial study was completed for the project and circulated for public review in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. And a negative declaration is recommended. All identified impacts are expected to be less than significant. Staff finds that any potential impacts resulting from approval of the project may be considered less than significant without mitigation. All future development shall be subject to review and approval from the associated agencies. The parcel to the east is the Ukiah Airport, City of Ukiah. On August 5th, 2021, a referral was sent to multiple agencies as well as airport land use commissions. Our office received no response or any critical comments. Staff recommends approval. This concludes my presentation, and I am available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any question for staff on this item? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Oh, I do see one. Commissioner Jones.
Hey, Tia. Yeah, I just had a quick question, and if you could provide me a little bit more of an overview of what the city of Ukiah's concerns were, just because I didn't really get a good sense of that from the staff report.
The city of Ukiah wasn't really concerned of much. They did make comments of wanting to see our initial studies, and that was provided, and we did not receive any comments afterwards.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tia, for that presentation. Do we have the applicant here with us today who wishes to make a presentation?
Yes, I believe we do. If we scroll down and Gulam, I'm sorry there. Yeah. We've brought the applicant over into the meeting. Please just unmute yourself and state your name for the record.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Gulam Ansari.
And do you have any comments you would like to add?
Not really, just wanted to add that, it's an existing gas station with a convenience store and we'd like to add a car wash. And there's no car wash, automatic car wash at that end of the town.
Great, thank you, Gulam. Commissioners, are there any questions that you have for the applicant? Commissioner Wiedemann.
Yes, in Tia's staff report, my understanding was that the water used at the car wash is going to be recycled. Can you verify that that's the case?
True, that is the case, yes. It will be, most of the water would be recycled.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was the nature of my question too. And I was wondering if you could indulge me by explaining how the water does get recycled. I've always been curious about these car washes, all the different chemicals and all the different choices of, the soap and the wax and the spot-free rinse. And, you don't have to take a long time to explain it, but if you could just give us a little overview of how that water recycling happens, that would be lovely.
My knowledge is maybe not more than yours. I'm a businessman, not very technical, and car washing is not my specialty. But I do know that there was a concern, and when I talked to my engineering department, they said that this technology is available, and we added that feature in our permitting application and the construction plans. And how they do it, I think there's a tank goes underground, and which has this technology which separates the water and then recycles it.
And Mr. Ansari, I do see that we have a Darren Tully with White Church Engineering that has their hand raised. Is he associated?
Oh, yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring him on over.
Great.
Hi, y'all. This is Darren with White Church. We the plans for Gulam, and we've installed quite a few of these car washes in California. They're due to the low use of water for California. They're all designed with this recycling technology. It does exactly that. It has a storage tank for the water. It recycles it. It sends it through a series of filters, and then it will have a little bit of usage that gets sent into the waste stream, but just a few gallons. And the rest is they have filtered out. They have to clean out the filters and replace those. And it's a good technology.
Thank you, Darren. And did I see, yes, Commissioner Babini, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm actually quite familiar with some of these processes. The City of Rohnert Park installed one that I had been working with when I lived down there, and they actually are very efficient, and it's more efficient than people actually washing their cars in their driveways, because you're actually reducing the amount of potential pollutants that are running off into our drains. And so I've always found that having a specific use designated for this and having a space where people can come versus wasting gallons and gallons of people washing their cars in their driveways, actually, I find is actually more beneficial to our environment than not allowing these. And I do agree with Mr. Ansari that, I don't believe there's any on this side of town. And I think it would be a great addition to the location that he currently has.
Great, thank you for that, Commissioner Babini. And was there anything else from you, Mr. Ansari or Darren? Anything else that you would like to share with the commission?
No, I don't.
Great, well, thank you both. At this point, I would like to open the public hearing. This is the point where we will address any telecommenters that have submitted their form and are waiting on the line. The clerk will read the list in order and call the next speaker. When called to speak, please state your name for the record, and public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item?
If any members of the public wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature, and we can pull you into the meeting. And I am not seeing any hands raised in the attendees area at this time.
Okay, so with that, we will close the public comment and bring it back to the commission for a vote.
Can I?
Yes, Commissioner Wiedemann.
I just wanted to suggest that the owner and the applicant make it a fun one, kind of like the Santa Rosa Splash. I don't know if you've taken your car down there, but it's totally colorful and, it's fun to go through. I suggest Ukiah could use something like that. That's all.
They did a great Halloween themed thing when COVID was in full swing, actually, that I thought was great, where they changed the colors and lights were all dark. It was pretty cool.
Anything else from the commission? Questions, comments? Okay, I do think we're looking for a motion then.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution of the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, County of Mendocino, State of California, recommending adoption of a negative declaration and the approval of a rezone for a portion of APN 003-43081 from C1 Limited Commercial to C2 General Commercial.
I'll second.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Babini,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Our next item is agenda item 6C, case U 2020-0007/2020-0001, a major use permit of gravel extraction near Dos Rios. And I'll turn it over to staff for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Purnell. I believe we have Dirk Larson available on the line here.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dirk Larson, planner with Mendocino County Planning and Building. The project before you today is a request to approve a major use permit to resume an in-stream gravel mining operation that has existed at this site as early as the 1980s and terminated in the early 2000s. This project would involve extraction of up to 20,000 cubic yards of sand and gravel annually over the life of a 20-year period, or a maximum amount of 400,000 cubic yards. Project activities would occur during the low flow season between June and October, with an anticipated total of 45 days per year for the operation. The area covers approximately 3 acres and would involve extraction of the material, load out and hauling off-site to a processing facility located several miles west along the Highway 162 or Covelo Road corridor there. No processing would occur at this site. The operation would consist of an excavator haul truck. There's no new development proposed here. There already exists an access road off the main highway. The operator currently has several in-stream mines in the vicinity of this site. And this would allow for an additional source of in-stream sand and gravel on the Middle Fork and promote reach-wide planning and coordination between the operator Wailati, between multiple extraction sites along this stretch of the river. The project is consistent with the general plan and zoning of this upland residential and rangeland. Both zoning designations allow development of natural resources. Mineral extraction is identified as a natural resource in the general plan mineral resource policy. CEQA review initial study mitigated negative declaration was prepared. With the mitigation measures implemented, the impacts to the environment would be reduced to a less than significant level. The project was properly noticed, and we received only one comment from Caltrans, and their concern was regarding encroachment permit and then for the operator to get a traffic control permit during hauling operations. Let's see, and then they also indicated they want the operator to cover any costs to damage to the state highway during this operation. I'd like to point out too that this project was routed to DMR, or the California Department of Mine and Reclamation. This is the state regulatory agency for surface mining in California, and they had no comments on this project. And at this point, I just wanted to give you a little background on these kind of mining projects. In-stream mining projects or surface mining projects fall under SMARA. And under SMARA, Mendocino County acts as the lead agency, and we're required annually to go out and inspect all these mining operations and assure that they're working within the reclamation plan boundaries. They're not, they're meeting the extraction amounts that are permitted for the year. And then what we do is produce a report and send that off to DMR for their review and comment. And so this happens every year. And then in addition to that regulation or oversight, Fish and Wildlife comes out every year and they do these cross-section surveys. So they'll compare it to the previous year, and based on the recruitment or replenishment in this particular area, they actually dictate how much you're able to extract for that year. So although the use permit may say up to a certain amount, Fish and Wildlife really determines how much they get to take. And in some years, if there was very little rain, they don't get to take any. So there is quite oversight and regulation with these type projects. And that's about all I wanted to say. Based on these mitigation measures and conditions set forth in the permit, planning staff recommends approval. Thank you. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dirk. And I appreciate you discussing how SMARA works. And can you estimate about how many site visits or inspections per year you would anticipate the site receiving, both from the county as lead agency as well as from other regulatory agencies?
So we have to go out every year. We're required by statute to go out every year and produce a report to the state and we have, I think, 29 or 30 sites in the county. The same goes for Fish and Wildlife, Water Board. They're all involved in these things and come out and do these cross-section surveys because it's critical to compare the previous year and the current year to make sure that they're not going to be extracting too much. I mean, I think it's important to note that they can't take up to this, whatever the major use permit is permitting, they can't take that every year. Fish and Wildlife, as I say, really dictates what they're allowed to take. So they're not going to disrupt the character of the river or the fishery and the habitat.
Thank you. You mentioned that there was a previous use of the site that permit expired, you said, in the early 2000s. Was that the same operator?
I don't believe so, but so there was multiple use permits permitted over, I think, in the mid to late 80s into the 1990s and terminated in the 2000s. And I think, I don't think it was the current operator. It may have been, but I think they just closed it down because maybe there wasn't much recruitment in this area. But this particular operator has in-stream mining operations above and below this site. And this would allow, I think, these resource agencies too, to determine the impact any of this kind of operation may have in this particular area of the Middle Fork of the Eel River. It's right above the confluence of the Middle Fork and the main stem of the Eel River.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question for you about condition 26, which states any stationary on-site internal combustion engines over 50 horsepower may require a permit from the AQMD depending on fuel sources and level of operation. What will those thresholds be, and how will the operator know if the permit is required?
Well, I think pretty much I think that's just to assure that heavy equipment isn't operated or located on site. I mean, really all they use in an operation like this is a smaller excavator loaded into a haul truck, and then they head off site. So I think that's just to assure that, and that may lean towards the prospect of maybe if processing was to occur, but there isn't any processing on the site. And Nash Gonzalez may have something more to add to this too.
If I may, through the chair, Nash Gonzalez, Interim Assistant Director. This condition has been a standard condition for a number of years. And just as Dirk pointed out, if they're going to have machinery operating on site, it would definitely have to be reviewed by Air Quality Management District and a permit issued. In this case, it's typically a front-end loader that would be used. And so the front-end loader has to abide by what we call the CARB rules, the California Air Resources Board. And operators over the last several years have had to upgrade their equipment. Otherwise, they can't operate in California. The operators, separately from this permit, typically have their equipment reviewed by both the state and the local agencies to meet the CARB requirements. But in this case, it's very minor. They will be utilizing a front-end loader, and typically that's not going to generate any issues or raise the project to a level where thresholds are going to be exceeded using state standards. The other thing that I wanted to go ahead and point out, and Turk's already covered this, is the site is subject to recruitment. And although they've asked for a maximum, the possibility of the maximum may be there in some years, and it really depends on the storms that we have in the area and the region that may flush the gravel material down. The other thing too is California Department of Fish and Wildlife will actually review the cross sections that are actually prepared by the applicant, and those are reviewed on a year-to-year basis. And data is produced using these cross sections to determine what the recruitment is, how it's occurring, and whether it's occurring. And at any point in time, since this permit is subject to a 1600 permit issued by CDFW, CDFW can actually say no extraction a given year or yes extraction. So every year they would have to obtain a 1600 to go through this process.
Thank you for elaborating on that, Nash. I've just got one more question for you guys. On previous use permits that are mining permits, when we've seen reclamation plans, there's been a bond required, but I either missed it or it's not in here. Can you speak to that, please?
If I can, through the chair, this is a state requirement, so it will be picked up. So one of the things that happens here is, separately from this use permit, is the operator will have a financial assurance cost estimate that will be submitted, reviewed, and then submitted to the state for a 45-day review. Once that 45-day review ceases, then we look to them for any comments. If they have no comments, then The county would then, as the lead agency, approve the financial assurance cost estimate as final. We would then be working with the operator to secure a financial assurance mechanism, i.e. a bond, letter of credit, or a certificate of deposit, to ensure that there is the adequate funds to cover the cost of reclamation. And again, that falls under SMARA. So we're actually dealing with both the state statute, the Surface Mining Reclamation Act, as well as the county ordinance that's located in Chapter 22 of the county code that would address those issues.
Okay, great. And so that's why we're not seeing that showing up in the conditions.
Correct.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure that we had all the bases covered there. Well, that's it for my questions. Commissioner Jones.
Sorry. Yeah, so I have a lot of questions. My first one has to do with the parcel boundaries. I looked up this property in Parcel Quest and also noted the parcel boundaries in the attachments to the staff report. They do not align with the parcel boundaries, the project boundary area. So the project boundary area appears to be extending into a parcel that's not part of the application and is not described in the project.
I think you have to be careful when you're looking at those resources, those parcel quests and aerials, because those can be skewed by hundreds of feet sometimes. So, you know, the boundaries of this thing kind of cover that portion of the river itself. And that came up earlier in the preparation of this report. Others questioned that as well. But so those, and I think Julia has talked about this before, but those aren't very accurate boundary marks.
Yeah, so I appreciate the fact that they're sometimes not aligned with the aerial photo, but the boundary description, like the actual geometry in the parcel map, does not map in any way, shape, or form the actual project area. So to me, your answer is not quite adequate.
Well, the reality is any property is described by legal description. That's the most accurate legal way to describe a property. So that's how the survey and how they determine the boundaries of the property anyway. So Parcel Quest is just a resource tool, really. I mean, and if you're trying to hang your hat on something like that, that's not very accurate. The legal description is the best method. The only correct method, actually.
All right, so you're quite certain that the entire project is located within the parcels that are in this application?
Yes.
You have checked that. Okay, maybe in the future when there's such an obvious divergence, you can just let us know that you've done that look.
Okay.
In review of the MND under the biological section, you're gonna have to wait a minute because I'm gonna have to find it. So page 4-15, they talk about doing a survey on May 30th of 2019, which is quite a while ago. And then as part of that survey, they indicate that the following wildlife species were observed in the Barren Project area, and they list steelhead, chinook salmon, foothill yellow-legged frog, and western pond turtle. They actually say these were observed under wildlife section 4.4.2.4. I'm hoping that's an error because it's certainly not consistent with the rest of the report. And I just feel like it raises a pretty big question for me that's a pretty significant error for no one to catch until now. And also just the fact that biological study was done quite a while ago. And then I have some issues with some of the mitigation measures for, let me just tell you what they are. So first, Bio 1, which references pond turtles. Let's see, I'm trying to find it, sorry. Not organized the way I'm used to these things being organized, but that's okay. I think they come first. Right, I'll just look at them in your staff report. So I had a couple of clarifying questions. So one of the mitigation measures under Bio-1 says immediately prior to the start of work, you would conduct a survey. The start of work is not defined. So is that the start of work every day or the start of work one time during the entire season from June through October? I think that needs to be defined because if it's one time in June, pond turtles can appear sometime between then and October. So that needs to be defined better. And the idea that pond turtle nests would be uncovered or discovered during excavation is a little bit laughable to me because they're buried so well that biologists can't even find them. And so I'm not even sure why we bother with special condition 2, but I guess it's better than nothing. Under the sedimentation section, you reference Bio 1 as a method to limit sedimentation. And I think that was an error because Bio 1 obviously is not about sedimentation. It's about pond turtles.
Yeah, and so, back to your initial concern, I think the applicant's available to answer some questions as well in regards to that.
Well, I'd like to go through all of them so that they can cover them all, and hopefully they're taking notes.
And I think that was a typo. I don't think they found those things there.
Okay. And then referencing Bio 1 when they met some other bio or that bio is not there. I don't know because it's unclear to me what mitigation measure is dealing with sedimentation.
Yeah, I think, again, I think all these things are found along that water course. So I think it's just a matter of assuring that measures are in place in case these things are observed at any time during the operation.
Yeah, so I got that part. My question is separate from that. So in the sedimentation section of the MND, it references Bio 1 as the mitigation measure that would address sedimentation.
Yeah.
Bio 1 is not about sedimentation.
Yeah, clearly that's incorrect, and that can be amended. But yeah, you're right. That doesn't.
Okay, it just didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And then I guess the other questions that I have is I'm not really sure under Bio 2, the second bullet point, what channel disturbance shall be kept to a minimum during construction activities within a channel and shall only occur within designated areas. Well, as a person who's reviewing this project, those are very unclear. It's unclear language to me what that means. So I guess I'd like to see mitigation measures that are more quantifiable because that to me sounds like too loosey-goosey.
Well, I think much of that depends on what CDFW says. These cross-section surveys are performed, and then they can make the determination where these guys get to extract for these.
Okay, so that's fair. Then what I would suggest is a mitigation measure that references CDFW to determine what the channel disturbance would be allowed instead of should be kept to a minimum.
Okay.
Typically, 100-foot setback from all streams and wetlands is required. And instead what you have is, this is under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 6th mitigation. It says refueling of equipment and vehicles and storing, adding, or draining lubricants, coolants, and hydraulic shall not take place within or adjacent to any stream. I think you need a more quantifiable setback, like 100 feet there. I'm sorry I'm being so picky, but I actually think that it's very important that we protect our natural resources. And this is a major mining activity in a stream bed that hosts numerous threatened and endangered species. And so it's important that we're careful and do this correctly. My other concern is that the resolution does not include any of the mitigations, neither does the attached special conditions. So it's unclear to me how the mitigations are part of the permit. And so I think that if and when this comes back, that needs to be addressed because as it's written right now, I'm not prepared to support this unless someone can provide evidence during the hearing portion that addresses my concerns. So I guess that's what I have to say so far. Thank you.
And if I may, on the mitigation measures, Commissioner Jones, I just want to call your attention to condition 32, which requires compliance with all mitigation measures in the mitigated negative declaration. And then I will just note for the benefit of the chair that I do have a few revisions to the resolution regarding findings when that timing is appropriate. But I think we'll go through some of Commissioner Jones's questions.
And
Oh,
I-
can I have a follow-up question, Julia? Why in some resolutions do you have the mitigation spelled out and not in this one? It just seems like for consistency, I think it's better to have everything in one permit document so people know where to find it. I don't know. It's just a suggestion.
If I may, through the chair, and Ash Gonzalez, interim director, questions that came up with regards to the setbacks and so on. Again, there is some latitude because a lot of this is going to change from year to year, depending on where the mining is actually occurring within the area specified for mining. And again, the operator's consultant is on the line and can answer those specific questions. However, as Dirk pointed out, there has to be some latitude because Department of Fish and Wildlife issues the 1600. They will actually use this mitigated neg deck. They will actually use the CEQA document, and then they will write the permit, and the permit will have different conditions based on changing conditions in the field each year. So this is for that reason that there's some latitude in this permit. And again, the applicant's consultant, Jordan Main, is on the line, and he could, speak to those issues. But again, we'll go through the other questions.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Jones, was that all that you had for now? We'll make sure that we get more answers to your questions. I just want to make sure you had a chance to share them all.
It's enough for now. I let other people bring other ideas up.
Okay, great. Commissioner Pollan.
Thank you, Chair Cornell. Two quick questions. One was just on the list of referral agencies. I'm curious why the Round Valley Indian Tribes are not listed as a referral agency on this particular project.
If I may, through the chair, Julia Krog, director, we have under AB 52, we conduct compliance. We reached out to all tribes to ask who wished to be notified of particular projects within their area. At that time, only 3 tribes responded saying that they'd like to receive referrals. Since that time, and actually just as of this, I think this was last month, is when Round Valley has now requested to receive referrals of projects within their area. So at the time that this project was referred out, they were not requesting to receive referrals of projects of this nature.
But as a courtesy, there was no additional outreach given to them before this came before us.
Not by planning and building services.
And my second question is just regarding the timing of activities. I see that they are to be concluded no later than October 15th. And I'm curious about how that time frame was determined. I just note that this past year, that would have just barely concluded activities before substantial early fall rains occurred. And I wonder if there's any consideration about amending that to be on the safe side of not having activities still in place when early fall rains arrive.
Well, I think that's a standard time period set up by Fish and Wildlife for the low flow season. And I think, as it indicates in the staff report, there's going to be up to 45 days of operation. So I think to your point, if that kind of thing occurs, then I think the operation then terminates for the year.
If I may, through the chair, Nash Gonzalez, to answer Commissioner Pollan's question, the timeframes that are spelled out in the conditions have been standard conditions that have been used for a number of years, because again, these are derived from California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Now, again, I'm going to defer back to their 1600 permit. The 1600 permit, depending on what they project out or forecast for weather, they can go ahead and limit the days and reduce them from 45 days. Usually the October date is a pretty hard, fast date. They don't want anybody in a stream or in a channel performing any work past October 15th, regardless whether you have rain or not. Basically, they will have that hard stop. However, if we start with early rains in September, they can actually call the permit and say, you're done, operator. You cannot extract beyond a certain date. Because I've seen over time in this county where permits through Fish and Wildlife have stopped on September 30th and not October 15th. It really depends on what Fish and Wildlife is forecasting.
So at one point, does Fish and Wildlife have the authority to modify that window at any point during the season?
Yes, they do. At any point, they can actually come out and change the conditions. So again, Fish and Wildlife has quite a bit of authority. We have the Land Use Authority, the SMAR Authority, but SMAR also says in statute, you have to consider everything that Fish and Wildlife, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the National Fish and Wildlife Service has to say about mining in a stream.
Thank you.
Is that all for you, Commissioner Pollan, at this time?
It is. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Babini.
So I'm actually pretty familiar with the 1600 permits as well as the Water Board's water quality 401 permits. And I wasn't seeing anything in here in regards, and I could have missed it in the staff report, regarding a 401 permit needed for any discharge potential into streams of the state. And I was wondering if that was going to be another requirement prior to the allowable use for the mining activity. I know that a lot of the times the 1600 permits are kind of hand in hand with some of the water quality permits. And I wasn't sure if that was taken into consideration, since sometimes the 401s will have their own mitigation measures. I know the October 15th date is also something that they frequently put in theirs, and that includes any mitigation has to cease before the 15th of October as well. So you can't just harvest up until the 15th and then do your mitigation if you have to re-level or anything in the stream bed after you're done for the season. That also has to conclude prior to that 15th date as well. And I just wasn't necessarily seeing that in there, and I wasn't sure if that agency was contacted at all for questions or comments on this as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Chair.
And I think it's something that in the future, just for more clarity, that should maybe be added into our staff reports. But as Nash indicated, it's kind of just the way these surface mining things go, and these resource agencies kind of go hand in hand. And some of these permits are simultaneous with the others.
If I may, through the chair, Nash Gonzalez, I want to go ahead and point you to condition number 17 on page 5 of the resolution. It actually makes reference to securing all permits at the start of the approved reclamation activities. And what this means is that the operator would have to secure permits from Army Corps of Engineers, which is the 404 permit, and the 1600 would generally require any additional permits also be secured, just like we're requiring them. And the operator would be required to contact the Army Corps of Engineers and provide a copy of their plan to them. And then the Army Corps could then decide whether or not they're going to require a 404. Typically, those are required for discharge into waters of the United States. Here, this is the reason why they're mining during low flow, so they will not discharge into the stream. If they were going to be crossing the stream across the river, let's say they were putting in a culvert or doing any type of road crossings, there could be the potential for discharge. And as well as if they were setting up a processing plant and doing washing and screening, there could be the potential for discharge. In this case, they're harvesting the material outside of the channel in the dry areas. So there should not be any discharge if they adhere to the reclamation plan and the mining permit.
Thank you, Nash, for the clarification.
Is that it for you, Commissioner Babini?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, Commissioner Wiedemann.
Actually, a lot of my questions have already been addressed, so I'm fine. I have nothing else to add or question at this point.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I would like to invite the applicant or their agent to present and hopefully address the questions that have been raised by the commission. Commissioner Jones, I do see your hand up. And I think you're still on mute. I just want to make sure you don't have anything else to add at this time before we go to
No, I'm sorry, that's old.
Okay, old hand. Great.
Old
So
hand.
we will in fact be going to the applicant or their agent.
All right, we have Jordan Main available on the line here. And Jordan, we're going to bring you over to allow you to speak. Please just state your name for the record. And if there's any other individuals that you'd like to have part of your presentation, please let us know.
Hello, Jordan Main, applicant's representative. I'm a land use consultant. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. I was trying to take notes on the multiple comments, and they're all good comments. So hopefully I can address them. I wanted to just expand a little bit on how Dirk and Nash, they did a very nice job explaining the process, but I think some of the questions may get answered just by a little more color around the annual extraction process. So this is a very well-worn regulatory process that involves not just CDFW, but coordination between CDFW, the regional board, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the National Marine Fisheries Service. So the way this works is we actually not only need the CDFW 1600 agreement, we anticipate we will need a 404 and a 401 certification, as one of the commissioners mentioned. We have those on each of the gravel bars in this reach. And that involves not only a host of course, conditions we have to follow, but there's a requirement that we submit a pre-extraction plan that lays out the area surveyed by a licensed engineer and the proposed extraction methodology, which has to align with the NIMS and CDFW approved extraction techniques, which involve buffers from the channel and a head of bar buffer to preserve the integrity of the gravel bar. So this is a very small site, so it ends up being a pretty small extraction area, but it's important to the operator in this stretch of river to be able to work with the agencies over multiple sites, just given that it's uncertain where recruitment will occur. So it sort of promotes a little more reach-wide planning between the agencies and the operator. So this pre-extraction plan is submitted, reviewed by the agency. There's a field visit. NIMS and CDFW typically see the site. Regional board does as well at times, and the Corps. They provide comments on the pre-extraction plan, and it gets adjusted based on those comments. So that's really based on the site-specific conditions for the year and the results of the annual surveying that's provided. So as Nash and Dirk mentioned, it's really based on recruitment on an annual basis and the recommendations of the agencies as to what that extraction looks like, if any extraction occurs at all. Just to address a couple of the other points, there was a question about the bond. As Nash mentioned, that's obviously rooted in state law. So there will be a financial assurance mechanism posted that's in favor of the county and the state of California. So if there was an issue at the site or some inability to perform reclamation, then that money would be used by the state or county to go and actually perform that reclamation. So that's what that money is set aside for. The question as to the boundaries, the site was surveyed by a licensed surveyor who reviewed the deed descriptions and the legal descriptions to come up with the boundaries shown in the application, and we're confident that the proposed project fits squarely within the parcels referenced. The work window of June to October, that is a very standard in-water work window. It's established up and down really Northern California by CDFW and NIMS. It does not mean we will extract that entire period of time. That's the potential time available. As Nash mentioned, both NIMS and CDFW and the regional board routinely constrain that window further on an annual basis, but the general work water window is June to October, and the work has to be confined to that period of time unless some extension is granted for a reason that would be very valid for them to give an extension. As one of the commissioners mentioned, all reclamation work also has to be done in that period of time. The references in the initial study, yes, appeared to be typos, obviously referencing Hydro 1 instead of Bio 1, and those species were not observed. The biological assessment makes it very clear in table, I could pull it up here, but that there were no species observed and really no habitat for the majority of the species, with the exception of one, which showed a moderate habitat for Western pond turtle. The others were all no habitat present. So I'm not sure I hit them all. There were a number of questions. I'm happy to put a finer point on any of the things I said, or if there are other questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Questions from the commissioners for the applicant? I'm gonna jump in here then, and thank you for that, Jordan. I was also looking at table 4.4-1 and only saw the moderate potential for occurrence for the Western pond turtle. Commissioner Jones, where was it in the reclamation plan that you saw that there was occurrence? Because if there, like, I'm just not comfortable moving forward if in fact it's stated in any of these reports that there was occurrence. You know, we would need to get that corrected first. I myself didn't see that, so I'm just wanting
So
to.
it's on page 4-17 of the draft initial study and mitigated negative declaration under 4.4.2.4 wildlife. It's the first sentence.
Right. Okay, there it is. Jordan, can you comment on that, please?
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's, we were not the author of this as third party. They're clearly referencing the report that was submitted, prepared by Galloway Enterprises. I'm looking at a copy of that. They were not observed. Galloway Enterprises report, I'll give you the dates here, but it was an attachment to the application. There was no separate site visit, so it was certainly not observed. These were recommendations by Galloway to be obviously conservative and protective of species that have any potential presence in that reach, but they were not observed. They couldn't have been observed when the time they were going, because it was obviously the summer low flow season. So that appears to be a misprint under 4.4.2.
Okay, it appears to be a misprint, and it's inconsistent with what we see in table 4.4-1. However, if that statement under 4.4.2.4 was correct, that would be very significant. So, you know, I'm not sure about the best way to proceed here, but that's a pretty big whoopsie if it is in fact a whoopsie.
I would just also say that May 30th, 2019, that's a 3-year-old survey at this point.
And am I still audible?
You're audible. Go.
So I mean, the survey timeframe, obviously, that's the amount of time it takes to get through the process. If there was a mandate to constantly update surveys to track when we'd be at hearing, there'd literally be an impossibility to get through the planning process. I mean, we've been at this for multiple years now. It's very clearly obvious that the report they're relying on, these weren't observed in the project area. And even if they were, I would suggest that the mitigations recommended are specifically to address these. So what they suggest here, let's assume they were observed. It's Chinook salmon, Western pond turtle, and foothill yellow-legged frog. There are mitigation measures implemented for each of these to avoid impacts. So even in the event they were present, which they were not, then the mitigations recommended are intended to address those species.
But if I may, through the chair, Julia Krog, the section, the wildlife 4.4.2.4 talks about that the species were observed in the Barron project area. But then it refers to that the species are discussed further in section 4.4.3, which accurately reflects the bio study stating that the Western pond turtle just had the potential to occur within the project site. I agree that could have been better clarified, but I do not believe that it's a fatal flaw with the project at this time.
I don't think it's a fatal flaw with the environmental document either. I just feel like, there are some mitigation measures here that are vague enough to me to be not sufficient. So for example, the immediately prior to the start of work, a qualified biologist will conduct a survey. Well, what does the start of work mean when you have a project that goes for 10 years that can start at multiple times within a season? I mean, I guess I don't maybe understand enough about the operation. Once you start, do you just do your 45 days straight, or do you go for a few weeks and then come back when you need more gravel so that you're not staging at multiple locations? I mean, I'm assuming there'll be multiple starts to the work within any given year. And that to me is not spelled out well. I think the 100-foot setback for refueling equipment is just like so standard. Like, can't we just spell it out? I don't know. And then, yeah.
Commissioner, I'm happy to address those 2 points. One, the goal of the operator is to get in and out as fast as possible and at one time. It would not be economical to start, stop, come back in. So there'd be a start date and then an extraction where they carry through while that equipment's on site. They wouldn't mob it out and then come back in. So that would be how that works as far as the pre-construction survey would occur annually before that work starts on the bar. And the 100-foot setback, we're more than happy to accept that. If you'd like to add additional detail, we will not be fueling equipment on the gravel bar. I mean, there's just no chance. It's absolutely prohibited by every agency's permit. If the use permit conditions are extremely light in comparison to the hundreds of conditions we will see through the CDFW agreement and the 401 certification related to water quality and habitat protection. But the 100-foot setback, if you'd like to put that in there, that's fine.
And if I may, through the chair, I think Jordan's pretty much summarized it, but as far as the work windows go, historically, what happens in this county with a lot of these in-stream mines is you typically have a work window of anywhere from 5 to 15 days. And as Jordan pointed out, it is not economical or feasible to do a start, stop, usually get in there, harvest the material, and then grade the site per Fish and Wildlife. And I just wanted to go ahead and point that out. Over the last 30 years, what we've seen in this county is mine operators don't do that as a practice. They generally go in, harvest, reclaim, and out they go. Again, it's not economical or feasible for them to do that.
Thank you for that. So Jordan, I heard that you're fine adding the 100-foot setback elaboration for refueling. One of the other issues that Commissioner Jones raised is under Bio 1 for Western pond turtle. She had requested that the start of work be more clearly defined. Can you recommend something that might be doable for the operator that would also help define that more accurately?
Absolutely. Yeah, the way I've seen this written in other cases, that would probably clear up that confusion. We can say annually prior to the start of extraction, a pre-construction survey would be conducted. That's how they're typically written. It's an annual survey. You go out and you have a biologist who performs that. There are many of these similar conditions in Humboldt County. They have an established program for in-stream mining. So that's similar to how theirs reads, is that it would be annually prior to extraction. And that would be fine to add that clarity.
Great. And so, Commissioner Jones, does that address your concern?
I mean, so if we're going to go through and try and address all my concerns, because I didn't raise them all, I mean, I don't know if we want to spend the time. I'd be perfectly happy to vote no instead. But one of the issues on the hatchlings, the Pacific pond turtles don't leave the nest when they hatch. They stay in the nest. So like when the hatchlings have left the nest, not when the hatchlings have hatched, they actually stay in the nest over the winter. So like the biologist didn't even know a basic thing like that.
Okay, so it sounds like at this time you don't want to go through all of your concerns on it.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm happy to vote against it.
Okay. Commissioner Babini, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to address, and I could be incorrect, but I think, since a lot of these use permits, they take a few years to review. I think under CEQA, I think that 5 years is acceptable for a biotic survey for length of times that you can use. It might be 3, I could be incorrect, but I am definitely aware that a lot of these use permits do take years for review, and requesting an applicant to get a new biosurvey every year. They do put in those mitigation measures to have a biologist do a survey prior to the commencement of any work. And I think that's why that is one of those requirements, is because that the initial survey and initial study done, may be a few years old at the time that the use permit actually comes to the commission for approval.
And if I may, through the chair, I'll just add so it's clear in the record, this project did go through state clearinghouse review. So all appropriate resource agencies at the state level did receive a copy of this initial study and mitigated negative declaration, and had the opportunity to comment for 30 days on it, as well as they also had opportunity to comment during our referral period. We did not receive any comments regarding concerns about the timing of the surveys that were provided as part of this. And it is not uncommon in our planning and building office that some of these studies do maybe several years old, and we really do rely upon the resource agencies to help to inform us when maybe survey methodologies have changed, maybe there's been new resources listed, because we do not have a biologist on staff within our office. So in at least staff's review, the timing of the studies is still within the appropriate window for the commission to be hearing this application.
And if I may, through the chair, I'll go ahead and also add another comment. One of the issues that is raised with mining operations is that for typical renewals or sites that have had prior mining, a permit typically takes about 3 years to go through the process. And 3 years really looks at the surveys, looks at the biological, the initial study, the environmental review, circulation, and so on. For brand new sites that have never been touched before, a lot of these typically take 5 years or longer to go through the process. And I think, as Jordan has pointed out, this is why the resource agencies want these pre-construction surveys done each year to update the information that has originally been created. Obtaining a mining permit in California is not an easy endeavor. It takes a lot of time to do all of the requirements that SMARA requires in the preparation of the reclamation plan. These reclamation plans have become much more stringent since the original permits for this site have been obtained and long past. And so what the applicant did for this is they went through a very strenuous process, because the Division of Mine Reclamation will not accept the reclamation plan until such time as all the issues have been addressed. And I know with this particular one, there were a few issues that needed clarification, and the applicant did address all those, and it did go through the Division of Mine Reclamation, and no comments were submitted after that, which means that they did not have any issues. At this point, what will happen is, if the commissioner does approve this, the reclamation plan will be submitted again to DMR. DMR at that point will want to see the financial assurance cost estimate, as well as the mechanism be put in place. All of that has to happen before they can actually put a piece of equipment out onto the site. And before that piece of equipment or pieces of equipment go out there, again, all the pre-construction surveys need to be done.
Thank you for that overview of the process. And thank you, Jordan, for your presentation. I think at this point, what I'd like to do is open the public hearing. This is the point where we will address any telecommenters that have submitted their form and are waiting on the line. When called to speak, please state your name for the record and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Do we have anyone joining us today who wishes to speak on this issue?
We did not receive any requests for telecomment. If there is any members of the public in the attendees area that wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature. Again, if you're on a telephone, it is *9. If you are using the computer, there is the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. It may be underneath the tab reactions. I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. So we will close the public hearing then and bring this item back before the commission. This is in my district, with myself acting as chair today. I will not be the one making the motion on it, but I did want to just share my thoughts on this for the rest of the commission's benefit. This is not the first use permit that I've seen in my tenure on the commission for this area on the Eel River. I mean, gravel extraction is something that happens here. I have not received any comments from anybody in my district. I do share some of the concerns that Commissioner Jones shared, the ones that she did elaborate on with regards to clarifying the conditions. If the commission does choose to support this use permit, I would ask that those changes be made. I also wanted to ask staff whether or not the commission has the option today of approving a 10-year use permit in lieu of a 20-year.
Julia Krog, Director, yes, you have the ability to approve any length of time you wish.
Okay. I would be supportive of a 10-year. I think that with the way that we're coming to understand the impacts of drought and our watersheds and salmonids, I think 20 years is a very long time for a use permit, and that we would want to see this again before us in another 10 years. So those are my comments on that, and I see Commissioner Babini's hand up.
So I may just need some clarity from Deputy County Counsel quickly. My family, my father sits on the road association in Laytonville, and we do utilize Wallotti for, road maintenance that would potentially utilize this gravel bar. And I wanted to make sure that I have no conflict, since my family, does work closely with them.
Council Matthew Kudrowski. I would say that is an obligation of commissioners prior to a meeting to review those issues. And if any questions come to us in our office for review, would appreciate that claim before a meeting and not during. There are certain standards that relate to financial responsibilities and interactions. I don't know that I can opine on that at this point in time.
No worries. I think at this point I would probably abstain, just under that, not knowing if that would be considered potential perceived conflict of interest, even if there's no financial gain associated. I think that's kind of where I stand at this point.
Any other discussion items from the commission?
Just ask for a point of clarity from you, Chair Purnell. You said you'd be willing to support this with some modifications, and I'm curious what the specific modifications are, and other than the 10-year time horizon, and if we will have an opportunity to have those provisions made today and make a vote on it this time or not.
Great, thank you for asking. Yes, so I would support the 10-year use permit, and I would support under Bio 1, under the key issues, the mitigation measures, bio 1, there was the clarification about annually prior to the start of work. And then also under bio 2, there was the clarification on the 100-foot setback for refueling. And I believe all the other issues that I had questions on were sufficiently addressed. I mean, I do have to say, I'm not pleased with the conflict within the reclamation plan itself, where it, states that species were observed, and then in the following, matrix, it says that they weren't observed. I mean, I'm not pleased with that, but I don't think it's a reason to hold the project up. But again, in my capacity as chair, I will not be making this motion. So I will be looking to other commissioners to make the motion, with Commissioner Babini as abstaining, with Commissioner Jones not supporting. I do believe that potentially not supporting. I do think that puts Commissioner Pollen or Wiedemann in a position to make the motion on this one.
And if I may, Chair Purnell, with the requested revisions being made to the conditions, staff would need a little bit of time to incorporate that into a resolution to present onto the screen for the commission's consideration. So if you wanted, I would say still go forward to consider which direction the motion is here, but prior to actually taking your final vote, I would make sure that those conditions have been reflected in a revised resolution and appropriate findings have been made. So maybe at this time it would be a tentative motion. And then I would either request that we take a break to allow staff to do that, or to move this item to the end of the agenda so that staff could work on this and come back and present that to the commission.
Okay, would a straw poll suffice?
Yes, a tentative motion would be sufficient.
Okay. So can I just see a show of hands then of those commissioners prepared to support this application with those modifications discussed? Okay, great. It looks like that we have enough support for staff to work on those modifications. Commissioners, it's 10:30. We have a lot of meeting ahead of us. Would you like to break now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready for a break myself. So staff, question for you. If we take a 10-minute break, is that a sufficient amount of time for you to make those revisions? Or if you need longer than that, we can just move this to the end of our agenda.
I would probably ask for a 15-minute break at minimum for us to work on that. If we still need additional time when we come back, we can ask that this be moved to the end of the agenda.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's go ahead and take that 15-minute break now. So that has us coming back at 10, let's call it 10:42. How's that?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Everybody back then. Thank you. Julia, was staff able to complete the revisions on the conditions and resolution?
Yes, we were, and I am going to go ahead and share my screen here. So give me one moment. Okay. So what you are seeing here, this is the resolution that was prepared for today's meeting. There was just a couple little Scrivener's errors that I have corrected. We were missing the T and mitigated, and then also noting that this was a public hearing held on May 19th. Then moving into the findings, as I noted during the discussion with the commission, staff had inadvertently left off the use permit findings, therefore we've added them here. So the first finding is regarding general plan consistency. We had specified that already in finding 1 included within the resolution. The second finding under use permits is related to adequate utilities, access road, drainage, and other necessary facilities. And we have stated here that the project is provided with adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities. The project site has been used for gravel extraction activities under use permit number 38-88 and use permit 38-88/94. The gravel extraction process will not require water supplies. The access road off of State Route 162 is approximately 1,033 feet in elevation with a steep drop in elevation to river access and is considered adequate to serve the project. Caltrans has required that the applicant obtain a valid encroachment permit and traffic control permit for during operations. Conditions of approval and mitigation measures are recommended to ensure the project will not result in any adverse impacts to hydrology or water quality and ensure that all necessary facilities are established. Under finding C, which is the nuisance finding, this states that the project will not constitute a nuisance nor be detrimental to the general welfare of the residents of the county. The project site has been previously used for gravel extraction under a use permit and its associated renewal starting in the late 1980s with entitlements valid through the early 2000s. As detailed further in the initial study and mitigated negative declaration, the project site is located in a rural, vacant, undeveloped area in eastern Mendocino County. All potential impacts have been thoroughly evaluated and have been deemed to be neither individually significant nor cumulatively considerable with mitigation in terms of any adverse effects upon the region, the local community, or its inhabitants. Conditions of approval and mitigation measures have been incorporated into the project to ensure that all potential impacts to the environment are less than significant. The last use permit finding is regarding the integrity of the zoning district, and this is also discussed under finding 2 above. And staff has added that extractive use types are allowed in both the upland residential and rangeland zoning districts with approval of a major use permit. In addition, the project site has been previously used for gravel extraction under a use permit and its associated renewal starting in the late 1980s with entitlements valid through the early 2000s. Then under the California Environmental Quality Act findings, staff has added here references to the revisions that were suggested during the discussion with the commission. Bio 1 shall be revised to specify that surveys would occur annually prior to the start of work rather than immediately prior to the start of work. Bio 2 shall be revised to require a 100-foot setback for fueling. Pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15073.5, the revisions to the mitigation measures do not trigger recirculation of the mitigated negative declaration, as the revisions do not create new avoidable significant effects, but instead modify the mitigation measures to make them more protective and clear. Then we'll move down into the actual conditions. So under here, staff did during the break catch that there was just a minor error in condition 2. So we've just struck the reference to a vested right within there. In condition 3, we've clarified this based upon the discussion with the commission to address that the time period during which extraction would occur could be that June 1st to October 30th, or as determined by the appropriate resource agencies. As we heard, CDFW may specify alternate time periods. Then moving down, going all the way to the end of the resolution, so I apologize for the quick scroll here. Condition 32, which is referencing all the mitigation measures being incorporated. Staff has added at the end of this that's with the following modifications for purposes of clarity. Bio 1 be revised to specify that surveys would occur annually prior to the start of work rather than immediately prior to the start of work. Bio 2 be revised to require a 100-foot setback for fueling. And then staff has added condition 33 to make it clear that this is a 10-year period that the use permit is being granted for, expiring on May 19th, 2032. And that concludes the changes.
Great, thank you, Julia. Commissioners, any questions on those? Okay, seeing none, I am ready to entertain a motion. And Commissioners Pollen and Wiedemann, I do believe we're looking to you two, one of you two, for the initial motion.
I would move that we adopt the resolution for permit number U_2020-0007 as amended by staff and presented to us here today.
Looking for a second on that.
I second that motion to adopt.
Thank you.
All right. Vice Chair Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
No.
Commissioner Babini,
I will be abstaining for today.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 ayes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Commissioners. That was a great discussion, and this is why I'm so glad we're a 5-person board so that we can get into all of this stuff and work it out. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6D, which is case U 2017-0036, Coastal Development Use Permit for Wireless Communication Facility north of Manchester. Okay, staff, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, Julia Krog, Director. So this item in front of you today was actually previously, well, let me back up and say this is a coastal development use permit for a 76-foot tall faux water tank with various appurtenant equipment. This is proposed to be located within a 1,050 square foot fenced area. The fencing would be 6-foot tall redwood fencing surrounding it. And there would be some extension of a gravel road and trenching of power and fiber to the site location. I do want to note that this site is located at the end of Kinney Road and does have state parks, the Manchester State Beach, surrounding it on several sides. This is also the location of the existing AT&T telecommunications facility that receives the underground subsea cable. So there is already an existing building on this site, as well as it being zoned public facilities for that purpose. So I do want to note that this item was previously before the Planning Commission on May 16th of 2019. And at that time, the application had proposed construction of an 80-foot tall monopine. Staff had recommended denial of the monopine application at that time due to concerns regarding lack of appropriate biological and botanical surveys to support the project and potential visual impacts. The Planning Commission at that time had continued the application to a date uncertain to allow the applicant to provide a revised proposal for a wireless communication facility at this location. The applicant then consulted with county staff, the Coastal Commission, and also several resource agencies regarding the biological surveys and also visual concerns associated with the project. Ultimately, that resulted in the revised design of this tower as a water tower as opposed to the monopine design. So there was referrals made of these revisions to the pertinent resource agencies, Fish and Wildlife, Coastal Commission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the Sonoma-Mendocino Coast District Office of the California Department of Parks and Recreation for review and concurrence. There's really 2 major key issues for consideration of this project: visual impacts and also potential impacts to biological resources. So starting with the visual resources, this site is next to Manchester State Beach or State Park, and it is a highly visible area, and that is shown in the revised photo simulations that were provided with staff's memorandum. You can see the true effect of the project upon the visual resources of the area. And this site is located within a highly scenic area of the coast, so I want to make sure that is also clear. Staff has reviewed the project for consistency with the visual resource policies and the coastal element, as well as the zoning code. And one of the requirements within highly scenic areas is to find that the visual impacts are insignificant, as well as also within the character of the area and would not detract from the visual qualities of the area. Since visual resources is highly subjective, staff has included those visual simulations so the commission can also make their determination on this. But with staff's review, we have found that any development on this site would potentially affect the visual quality, but that this design has been done in such a way with the water tower that it is the least intrusive and is consistent with the highly scenic area policies. As noted in the staff report, the California Department of Parks and Recreation has continued to express concerns regarding the visual impacts of the project. Their original comment letter was included in your packet, as well as they provided an additional comment letter, which has been made available to the commission and is available on our website. Next, I'm going to move to the biological resources. So this is a site that is adjacent to some very sensitive habitat areas. There is actually the potential for Western snowy plover habitat, which is a threatened species under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Federal Endangered Species Act. It is also listed as a species of special concern. There have been various studies provided, and there were concerns originally that this tower could potentially result in providing perching habitat for birds of prey that could prey upon the snowy plovers and other species. As a result, a tower avian avoidance plan has been provided and has been included and made part of the record today, which includes having bird spikes installed on the top of the tower, as well as having netting down the sides of the tower to ensure that birds cannot perch or create habitat on that could impact the Western snowy plover. I'll also add here that California Department of Parks and Recreation, as well as the Audubon Society, have continued to express concerns regarding the mitigations associated with the snowy plover potential impacts. Their comment letters have been made available for today's meeting. And I do believe we have the applicant's biologist also available on the line today for any questions. I do want to note that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Jenny Hutchinson, who is the Western Snowy Plover lead for the Del Norte, Humboldt, and Mendocino counties, had responded to staff on October 27, 2021, noting that she had reviewed the design and associated measures for surveying and reporting and did not have concerns that the updated tower design would serve as perch for Western Snowy Plover predators. This site also has potential habitat for the Barren silver spot butterfly. No species were observed, and the application was also referred to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but there were no comments expressing potential concern with the project related to that species. The Pointerina mountain beaver also has the potential to occur within this area. There was site visits conducted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service lead for the Pointerina mountain beaver, Gregory Schmidt, who again concluded that there was unlikely to be take of Pointerina mountain beaver, as he did not observe any burrow entrances within that area. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife has reviewed the project and provided comments initially expressing concern. However, these have been resolved as of 2021 with updated information provided, which is detailed in the staff report. There are mitigation measures recommended related to the biological resources. These are Bio 1 through Bio 9. In regards to other potential impacts associated with the project, the staff report covers these various areas, but I'm not going to go through each one in individual detail, as I believe I've highlighted really the two key issues for this project, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Staff did prepare an initial study for this project, and as noted during my presentation, there are some potential significant impacts, but staff finds that those can be reduced to less than significant with the incorporation of mitigation measures. I want to also call to attention to the commission that we did receive a comment last night at about 6 p.m. from the Department of Toxic Substances Control, advising staff that we had incorrectly stated within the mitigated negative declaration that this site was not on a Cortese list. And they are correct. It is on a Cortese list, as there was a previous unauthorized release on the site back in the 1990s. However, there is no further action recommended by the State Water Resources Control Board related to that release, and that case has been closed. That location for the unauthorized release is also within the fenced compound of the subsea cable facility and not within the area where this project is being developed on the parcel. So with that, that concludes my presentation, but I would like to turn it over to Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, as I believe he has a few comments on the project as well.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski has also received on this project earlier this week, and our office received it like yesterday afternoon, is a letter from counsel from AT&T. And what we would like to do is ask that there be a continuance considered for this project. We can go ahead and please hear it today and hear discussion, but prior to any kind of motions, that this be continued to a date certain to allow staff and counsel additional time to review the legal arguments being proposed or put forth in that, as well as the administrative record to review for any kind of issues of factual issues raised in that letter as well. So if we could, just hear things but stop short of any kind of tentative decision, that would be our request for today.
And just to tag on to that, to the commissioners, I do want to make you aware, we have a signed tolling agreement on this project, which does expire tomorrow. So if the commission were to consider continuance, we would need to have discussion with the applicant to ensure they would agree to a revised tolling agreement as well.
Commissioner Wiedemann and then Jones.
Yes, I have a question about this last minute request to postpone. If we deny the postpone and we go forward with hearing this, does that put the county at risk in any legal manner?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I think I'm not asking for a postponement of the entire agenda item. I'm looking for a continuance prior to any kind of motion being made. So, full discussion, public comment, deliberation. In terms of, our office had a handful of work hours to go through the legal arguments and see if we think there's any issues of concern that we can bring to the commission's attention. We'd like some more time to review that and also talk with staff about what's in the record on some of the points that have been raised in that letter as well. So I think that would be the request from our end.
Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the timelines for this application are looked at very carefully, because in the past, at one point, we had to postpone a meeting and then it was de facto approved because the time period for review of the application had gone beyond the statutory limit. And so before we make a decision to do that, I'd like to not make a decision today. I'd like to have assurance that we haven't reached that time limit. Thank you.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I'd have to look to Ms. Acker or Ms. Krog for any kind of confirmation of dates. But if I'm correct, we're already under an existing tolling agreement for time. And hopefully, when talking with applicant representatives, we can. I'm not looking for a long amount of time. It would be an agreed upon extension. Ideally, it would be nice to get 2 meetings down the road, but if necessary, just to the next meeting, so we can do this evaluation and come back to the commission with responses and advice based on additional analysis of that letter. So I do think in the end, AT&T could make the argument and say they would not want to go forward. I would also note, getting a letter in relative short proximity to the meeting, I think we'd want, if need be, we'd like to discuss that with AT&T representatives later today. So.
And as I noted, the tolling agreement expires tomorrow.
Yeah, so I was talking about something other than the tolling agreement, and that is that there's a statutory limitation to approve cell towers within a period of when the application was submitted. So to me, they're very different issues. And my concern is the tolling agreement is really about whether or not they're going to pay you to do more work. The other issue is whether or not we have the authority to make a decision at a later date, given the time limitation on approvals for cell towers. Thank you.
To clarify, the tolling agreement is not about whether they're going to pay us for additional work. The tolling agreement is tolling that statutory timeline to review the project. So that is what's on point, is the continuance and hopefully getting agreement on that again for a short period of time. So it is separate and apart. This isn't getting to a deemed approved remedy. This is looking at, we have an existing tolling agreement that got us to this point. And given the relative short notice on these issues being posed by applicant counsel, we'd like to have at least a little more time to review those.
I'm going to ask a really basic question at the risk of asking a dumb question. The applicant is AT&T. And we're supposed to make a decision by tomorrow. But then late last night, their attorney submitted a letter that has changed things so much that now we're going to be considering continuance, but we're not sure if that same applicant whose attorney submitted the letter is going to agree to extend the tolling agreement. Do I have that correct?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, technically the short answer is yes. Now, there are some arguments about equitable tolling that if we need to get into that, we can. But we can talk with the representatives from AT&T on this. Again, I do think it would. Our office got it last night. I think looking at the timestamp of the email, it may have gotten to a different inbox and for the PBS commissions on Tuesday. I apologize for the gap in time in terms of when I saw it coming from planning and building last night. So given that is coming to us on short notice, I would hope they would be okay with a short-term extension on that, to be honest, but we'd have to hear from them.
Okay, sure. Understood. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the setup correctly here. Nevertheless, it does seem as though we are going to hear this item today and deliberate on this item. And then when we do get to the point to consider the continuance, I may have some more questions and ask for more on that. Commissioner Wiedemann, did you have something? Oh, you're still on mute.
I do have something, and I have a couple things. I'm actually ready to move through on this because it came before us and then they AT&T pulled it earlier. My concern is the lateness of their attorney contacting our county council. And my concern is, I am ready to go through this, hear it, and vote on it. If we were to do that, vote on it, whether it passes or it fails to support this tower or this water tower, we're within our jurisdiction to do that. Is that correct, County Council?
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, the letter does raise certain preemption arguments on the federal limitations and what the county can or can't do. And those are some of the issues that we'd like some more time to evaluate before we make any kind of tentative motion on this project. So there are concerns that we have based on what they're reviewing, and if we happen to agree with those concerns, we can properly advise the commission on doing that. And if we want to go to that, to the applicant representative to see if they have serious concerns on this point before we go forward, I think that could be appropriate. But on this issue, that's why council is looking for additional time to review to be able to vet those concerns. And I think we need to be advising the commission more specifically on what we think limitations are or are not. We'd like some more time to do that.
May I continue, Chair Parnell?
Please.
So with that, I actually want to postpone the whole meeting for this. I do not want our commission to go through all the information and our concerns, pro or con, and then have AT&T hear all of this, and then have the opportunity to legally present more information. That doesn't feel fair. That doesn't feel right for the process. So if County Council needs more time to review the legal letter that was submitted to him by AT&T to review things, then I suggest we recalendar the whole thing.
If I'm not mistaken, we would need an agreement from the applicant about an extension on the tolling agreement in order to be able to do so. Is that correct, Matt?
Deputy County Council Matthew Kudrowski, I would want to go to the applicant next. If they want to take a break for a discussion, we can do that as well on this particular point. But yes, as the current tolling agreement as it stands, that's where it is. And hopefully, because we got this letter, and again, technically, a day and a half before the hearing, in terms of the initial email at PBS,
Right.
would be relatively understandable on their end for our opportunity to review.
Okay, thank you.
It would also be, sorry to cut you off, but just to add on, it'd be at the chair's discretion in terms of any additional discussion today or not.
Okay, thank you. So, and Commissioner Wiedemann, you have been heard on those issues. Thank you very much. I do think we need to go to the applicant and have them present at their choice, either present, the project, the proposed project. I do believe that the commission would also like to hear about this request for continuance, as whether or not the applicant would be agreeable to an extension of the tolling agreement so that the commission can make a decision about how to proceed today. So with that, I'll hand it over to the applicant.
All right, we're going to bring into the room Jared Kearsley and Donna Davis. And please just unmute yourself when you're ready to speak and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Jared Kearsley on behalf of AT&T. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. To respond to the tolling agreement, AT&T is always wanting to work closely with jurisdictions, in this case, County of Mendocino, in working out all the kinks on their projects. We understand that this is a touchy project in a sensitive area. With that said, we would happily execute another tolling agreement to extend the shot clock, the federal shot clock, by additional weeks to cover the next hearing. So County Council has adequate time to review the letter from AT&T's council that was sent in Tuesday but received yesterday. So with that, I will defer to planning commissioners if they want to hear the project and the applicant's presentation today, or if that is wanting to be postponed until next hearing.
Okay, so Jared, just to clarify, you said that you'd be willing to extend the shot clock by a number of weeks. That starts to get into our commission schedule. Staff, perhaps you can confirm whether or not the first meeting in June has in fact been canceled.
It has not formally been canceled. We were waiting to see if any items were continued from today's hearing.
So that would be, there's June 2nd is the next available agenda. June 16th is the agenda following that.
Deputy Council,
So June 2nd still available.
Deputy County Council Matthew Kudrowski, I would like to confirm with Mr. Kearsley if it would be possible to get it to the 16th. There was only 2 weeks time between now and the first meeting. It would be nice to have a little more time than that, given the other work that we're also working on at the same time.
Yes, I believe that would be okay.
I'm going to take that as an affirmative.
It'd be through June 17th then, yeah?
16th.
Oh, yes, but the tolling agreement would be through June 17th. Yes, yeah.
Okay. Great. I do think that that's helpful to the commission. So thank you for that, Jared. Jared, it sounds like you're not desiring to present the project today until you've heard how the commission decides on this issue. Is that correct? Is that all you have for us now?
Not necessarily. This is Jared Kersligan on behalf of AT&T. I'm more than happy to present. We have Steve Geis with Geis Engineering and Environmental Group, and Cord Hugh, the biologist who conducted the field surveys and the studies. So we are well prepared to present. However, if the commissioners have hesitation of allowing us to present and go through the whole hearing process with public comment, then I was just trying to say we are okay with holding that off as well until next hearing. We are indifferent with that decision.
Thank you for clarifying. Are there any commissioners that object to hearing the applicant's presentation today?
I do.
Okay, we have one objection.
I just wonder if it might make more sense if we're going to be continuing this and hearing it in its entirety. I think I would probably be able to hold the information better if it's all presented at once on the day that we're making a decision on it.
Great, great. Okay, so I think with that, then we are looking, well, actually, Deputy County Counsel, do we go to public comment on this before we vote on continuance?
The County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski. I think that's at the discretion of the chair. I think typically both at the commission and board level, I've seen chairs ask if people do want to offer comment now in case they can't make it to the continued hearing date. But by doing it to a date certain, everyone's aware of when this would be to come back to.
Great. Thank you for that. We're going to hold public comment and move that to our June 16th meeting, where we will hear this item in its entirety, should the commission now vote on a continuance. Looking for a question.
I'll move to continue this item to the was it the 17th of June?
June
16th of June.
I'll second, but can I make a suggestion that this be the first item on the agenda? Because I know people who come to these meetings and then to sit through all of this and then not be able to speak, it's got to be super disappointing. So I'd prefer to have these items that have a lot of public interest be the first item on the agenda, just for public process.
We can accommodate that.
Thank you. Great. So we have a first and a second.
All right. Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiedemann?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan?
Yes.
Commissioner Bibini?
Yes.
Chair Purnell?
Yes.
Motion to continue passes unanimously.
Great. So this item will be coming back on a date certain, June 16th. At this point, I would ask staff or Deputy County Counsel to comment and clarify whether or not this item will be re-agendized.
It will be re-agendized for that meeting, but it will not be re-noticed since it was continued to a date certain. So the original notice went into the Independent Coast Observer. We would not be sending an updated notice because the commission has continued to a date certain.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So that is, oh, and I just wanted to say one more thing. When this does get re-agendized, on the request still referenced a monopine, and that should probably be changed to the water tower next time it's agendized. Thank you. Okay, so we are now moving on to, if I'm not mistaken, we're on item 7, matters from staff.
We have no matters from staff. We are available for questions.
Okay. Item 8, matters from the commission. Anything, commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, I just wanted to check in. I kind of expected to see our resolution about vacation rentals back on the agenda, and it wasn't. And so I just wanted to check in and find out what the status of that and when you think you might be bringing it back.
Perhaps there was a miscommunication. I thought staff had understood that would be coming back at your meeting in June to allow time for council to review it as well as staff. I apologize for that miscommunication on there. In the future, if there's ever you see your packet and you see something missing that you thought should be there, please don't hesitate to reach out to staff, because with 72 hours notice, we can still include something on an agenda.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think it's important that everybody have a chance to look at it and review it. I just wanted to know if do you think it's likely that it will be on the 16th then?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thanks. Mostly because people are curious and they want to know. And I told some people that it was going to be heard today, and now I look like a fool. So, sorry.
Well, and Commissioner Jones, just for continuity's sake, thank you for following up on that, because now we're all more certain about what to anticipate.
Oh, and pardon me, Chair Purnell, I do actually have one item that we got confirmation on that you had asked about at the beginning of the meeting, which was about availability of board chambers for hearings for the Planning Commission. And we've received confirmation from Clerk of the Board that at this time, those are still not open to any bodies other than the Board of Supervisors. So at this time, the commission would still be remaining virtual.
Thank you. And I just have one question about that. Who makes that determination?
I would have to follow up with Clerk of the Board exactly where that's come down from. But that was the response that we received when we asked about that today.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, any other matters from the commission? Seeing none, we will move on to the approval of meeting minutes, starting with the minutes from January 6th, 2022. Any changes needed to these? If not, we're looking for a motion to approve.
I would approve the minutes as drafted.
Looking for a second on that.
I'll second.
Deputy County Council Matthew Kudrowski. I may just quickly, ask for any public comment on the minutes as we're doing them, but I imagine not. But please offer to those in the room if there's any comments.
Okay, this is an opportunity for public comment on our action minutes from January 6, 2022. If there are any members of the public wishing to comment, please raise your hand or otherwise let yourself be known.
I see no hands raised in the attendees area.
And neither do I, so we will close public comment on that. And we have a first and a second on this one. I believe we're ready for our roll call vote.
Vice Chair Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Babini,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Approval of January 6th minutes passes unanimously.
Fabulous. Those are approved. And now we move on to the Planning Commission meeting minutes from May 5th, 2022. Any discussion needed on this, Commissioner Babini?
I just wanted to make the one edit that I was present at that meeting under commissioners present.
Thank you. We will include that. Our apologies.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go to public comment. If there is anybody wishing to comment on the meeting minutes from May 5th, 2022, please raise your hand. I don't see anyone. Julia, do you?
I do not.
Okay, closing public hearing on that, bringing it back to the commission for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from May 5th.
I'll second.
And if we may just confirm that that's as amended.
As amended, yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Babini,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Approval of minutes from May 5th with the addition of Commissioner Babini as present as passes unanimously.
Wonderful. We've got our approval of minutes out of the way, and we are under our final agenda item, which is adjournment. And I am inviting a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn, and I'd also just like to ask Adrian not to send us these 2 large documents again that we're going to look at in the future. We'll just hang on to them.
Great.
To
Looking
echo that
for-
sentiment, unless there are any substantive changes that require doing so.
Thank you for that. So we do have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll make a second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You guys next time.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.